And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my series, Little Known Comics You Should Try. And even though I've only done 4 or 5 years in this series, I'm already going to do something a little bit different and a bit avant-garde and veering away from the parameters of this segment because today I'm going to talk about a little known film that you should try. And what I want to talk about today is the British romantic comedy drama, kind of an indie film more than anything else, called Cashback. Now, Cashback is, for my money, one of the best superhero origin stories, or possibly supervillain origin stories that I've watched. I think it's great. Before we dive into it, just a couple of disclaimers. Firstly, I'm conscious that there will be a clickbait thumbnail for this video, but that's simply because that's the cover of the DVD. What I'm going to point out is this is not a sexy, titillating movie. There is not really any. I mean, there's a tiny bit of nudity, but nothing more than you just get in the ads popping up on your computer screen when you're on any website. So I wouldn't worry about that. If you're going into this looking for some kind of weird, sexy, kind of semi-porno, softcore superhero movie, that's not what this is. It is a romantic comedy drama, heavily weighted towards the comedy, heavily weighted towards the drama. And to be honest, this movie, more than anything else, is it's more like Unbreakable than it is like other superhero movies. I'm not knocking that at all. I'll be honest, I love the MCU, and Endgame is probably my favorite film of all time. Yes, I'm aware that makes me basic. I don't care. But at the same time, I really, really enjoy art house and more independent superhero movies. I was a huge fan of Unbreakable when it came out. Unbreakable is one of the greatest films of all time. I'm a massive fan of Brightburn, which has come out relatively recently. And if, like me, you enjoy your more thoughtful, more kind of measured, more slowly paced superhero movies, the more subtle ones, Cashback is something to check out. By the way, it's not billed as a superhero movie, and I'm pretty sure that the writer and director, Sean Ellis, wouldn't consider it a superhero movie at all. I think if he was to ever see this video, he'd be shocked and surprised, quite probably disagree with me. But I don't care. This is my opinion. So what is Cashback? Cashback was originally a short kind of indie festival film that was made. I think it was like 7 minutes long, and it came out in 2004, won a bunch of awards, and as a result of that, it got some funding to be expanded into a feature length film. The actual film itself is just about 100 minutes long, so relatively short, and it came out in 2006. Both the short in 2004 and the feature length film in 2006 were written and directed by Sean Ellis. So what's the storyline here? Well, it's about an art student called Ben who basically has a pretty agonizing breakup with his girlfriend, who you never really see or get any flavor of. And as a result of that, he develops insomnia. Because he develops insomnia, he's not sleeping at all. He basically takes a job at a local Sainsbury's, and he's there working there on the night shift. What then happens is Ben develops the powers, and this is unexplained. He develops the power to freeze time whenever he wants. He can just freeze the entire universe, and he can carry on moving around and doing what he wants. In that sense, if you've read comics, it's a little bit like the comic Sex Criminals. If you've ever read Sex Criminals, what happens in that is there's a couple of people where they find out that when they have sex, after they've orgasmed, the world is frozen for a couple of minutes, the refractory period, if you know what that is. Um, and in that time, they can commit crimes. I guess it's a similar premise to that, except far less kind of trite and, I guess tawdry because there's nothing about sex, and it's also completely voluntary. He can just snap his fingers and freeze the world. And for most of the film, you kind of like, is this something he's doing, or is this just his imagination running wild? Um, and there's various bits and pieces which kind of imply it's one, or kind of imply it's the other, and so on. And that's where the clickbait image on the front of this video comes from, and that's where the clickbait video in the front of the DVD comes from. One thing he does, he basically goes around the supermarket, undressing women, and then drawing them as life sculptures, and then redressing them again. I know it sounds really creepy and weird, and it's worth keeping that in mind in terms of what I'm going to talk about in a second. Anyway, the movie itself is hilarious. It's got some bits that are just laugh out loud funny. The acting is great. If I was going to describe it as anything, imagine Hot Fuzz meets Unbreakable, but with much less action than either of them. Um, it's such a subtle, slow, understated movie. I wouldn't say this is a romantic movie. If you watch this with a partner, assuming your partner's a woman, she will be very uncomfortable watching this movie. There's a really interesting point in the middle of the movie where, whilst Ben is kind of walking around the frozen world, for the first time, and it's only hinted at once, just in literally just a few seconds, you realize that there are other people that have this power that can inhabit this world. It doesn't revisit this, it doesn't touch back on this again. But for me, I think that's one of the moments that really makes this movie. You have this guy that develops this power, and you realize he's not alone. This isn't in his imagination. At least I don't like to think it is. And there are other people that have this power as well. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know who they are. It's only really inferred. But if we look at the character of Ben, it's like, well, what does Ben do? Ben's romantic. He's lovelorn. He's developing a mutual crush on a colleague. But also, what does he do when he has this power? He works in Sainsbury's and he uses it to freeze time and take advantage of random unknown women to undress them. And in this case, all he does is he draws them. But there's something kind of terrifying about the psychology behind that. Is he a good guy? Is he an artist? And the film very much portrays him as this kind of like um, winsome, whimsical artist doing life drawing and kind of like caught up in his own mind and so on. But also objectively, it's like, is this guy a fucking creep? Like what is this? Is this the origin of a superhero, or is this the origin of a supervillain? And it's really hard to tell because the film doesn't play into that at all. Like I say, I'm sure Sean Ellis never actually viewed this as a superhero film at all. It is a romantic comedy drama. But at the same time, like when we look at it as in this guy has this ability and this is what he does with it, it's like, well, you kind of feel for him. He's in this relationship, he's with his friends, he's working with his friends in Sainsbury's, he's got this dead end job. But at the same time, there's an implication behind all this, which is really interesting and will stay with you. It will haunt you. You will consider it again and again. What do other people think of this? Well, on Rotten Tomatoes, Cashback's got a score of 48%, giving it pretty much like average 5 out of 5 rating. Some people say it's all right, some people say it's rubbish. Basically, mixed or average. I get that, and I've never really heard anyone else talking about it. I don't know anyone else who's watched it or really kind of liked it. What I will point out is the short film won 14 awards at International Film Festival. It got nominated for the 2006 Academy Award for Best Live Action Short Film. That's how it got the funding for the feature-length film. The feature-length film, like I say, has had kind of um, middling reviews and middling commentary. What I will say is that from my point of view, this is one of my favorite superhero movies. And when I've watched it with people, or when I've bought it with people, I think I must have bought this on DVD about a dozen times, and 11 of those were gifts I gave to other people. And when people have watched it, and I've been like, oh, what did you think? Some people liked it. Some people were very uncomfortable. Some people thought it was funny. Some people thought it was kind of thought provoking. And every time I spoke to people, I was like, it's kind of like a superhero movie, isn't it? No one had really seen it that way. But when I kind of talked it through, well, this guy's got this power, and this is what he does with it. And this is really kind of the origin of a superhero or a supervillain. It's hard to say. Whenever I've spoken to people about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I never thought of it that way." And the thing is, that narrative does fit this movie. It does make sense. It's just, I don't know. Maybe that's just all in my head. What I would say is this: this film is very, very little known. It's not unpopular. It's also not popular. What I would say is that if you like stuff that I recommended on the channel before, if you fancy spending 2 hours just watching a movie, and if you like movies like Brightburn, like Unbreakable, and just things like that. It's definitely the sort of movie that you should check out. Um, Maybe it's a bit like Chronicle, if you watch Chronicle, but again, there's basically no action in this movie. It's just long, slow, thoughtful, well sculpted arty shots and arty panning over various things and voiceovers and so on. It's a very British superhero movie. But for all that, this is great, and I would highly, highly recommend check it out, make up your own mind, and let me know what you think. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.